Okay, so I want to kind of do a video series on pistol squat progression, and I think people are fascinated by pistol squat because it is so difficult, and I had to think about why it's easy for me to do the pistol squat. Partially, it's because I'm Asian, and have the ability to open up my hips more, but that doesn't explain everything because the pistol squat is a unilateral exercise, meaning one leg, not bilateral. The Asian squat, as we call it, is bilateral. It's the ability to open your hips this way, which has nothing to do with the pistol squat. So one of the things that people miss, and they think it is a leg strength exercise, specifically the quadricep, because it's the largest and strongest muscle on your body. Well, technically it's your glute, but we'll focus on the quad, and it's not. The quad only comes into play when you're about at the 90-degree angle. After that, it becomes other things, and one of them is your hip flexion, your hip strength, hip flexion. But one thing that people don't think about is your ankle flexion and your ankle strength, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate to you right now. And so what I'm going to do is arguably the most difficult thing is to come off the ground with one leg in the seated position. And at first, I'm gonna describe to you what I'm feeling on my leg. And as soon as I get off the ground, what you're probably gonna hear me say is that's where you start to feel the ankle. And if you don't have a strong ankle, you're not getting off the ground. And more importantly, if you lower yourself, you're not coming back up. So here we go. And the first part is it's driving your hip. And that's pretty much what I'm feeling right here. And now my ankle is probably at a 30-degree angle, a very close 30-degree angle, and I'm going to drive up. And I'm going to drive back down. Seated and drive back up. And that's the thing, it's like right about here, you're feeling a lot of tension on your ankle. And if you don't have that strength there, it's going to collapse. And if you're lucky to get past this point, it's definitely quad dominant and starting to take over your hip glute a little bit there, and then it's your ankle. And I think that's the part that really gets people. And so the next part is about how to strengthen your ankle, and it's called dorsiflexion. So now I'm turned around. Ankle dorsiflexion is one of the least exercised movements in your lower body. And what dorsiflexion means is simply contracting or lifting up your toes off the ground, or contracting your ankle this way, as opposed to plantar flexion, which is going the opposite way, which a lot of people tend to do when you jump. But dorsiflexion, like I'm doing here, and focusing on drawing it up and using this muscle on the front of your shin, is very important. A lot of times when people get shin splints, it's probably because of lack of dorsiflexion muscle. And this is a very simple way of working dorsiflexion, is using the resistance band and just simply getting a little bit of tension and pulling back on it. It's kind of janky, but you got to get some tension on it, and just contracting it. And you can feel the muscle contracting here. You could do it with a weight. Take a kettlebell, use the handle, and stand on top of the stair and lower the weight. There's lots of ways of doing it, but the point of this is to be mindful of dorsiflexion and whether or not you're actually doing it in your exercise. These are the little muscles that you have that allow you to do really cool movements and just be healthy in general. And why the dorsiflexion is important is when your ankle's in a closed off position like this, like such, in that pistol squat position, this muscle in front of your shin is really contracted. And if you don't have that strength, and this is all part of the chain, if you don't have that strength that goes through your ankle, you're not going to be able to drive yourself up off the ground, and which is the whole point of the pistol squat, because all of the load is only on one leg. And but exercising these small muscles, they're incredibly important. And frankly, that's how I have been able to do a lot of the things I can do, is because I do work out these little muscles because I don't just do barbell work where I don't have unilateral strength. And but yeah, try working on dorsiflexion, and I'll continue my series of pistol squat progressions. Okay, so part 2 of working on the pistol squat. One of the things people don't pay attention to is actual hip mobility. They focus again on the strength aspects of things, but hip mobility is incredibly important. And the stuff I'm going over, like ankle dorsiflexion and now hip mobility, these are skills, mobility drills, strength exercises that will transcend for many different purposes, even if you never get to do a pistol squat. So one of the things that people don't focus on is hip mobility, and in particular hip internal rotation. One of the most common stretches, things you learn in middle school, is this stretch where you can splay yourself out, and most people feel more comfortable with their hips externally rotated, meaning just like I described to you this way, as opposed to internally rotating yourself like this. And the reason why this is important is when you're doing the pistol squat, your knee actually dives inward if you were to draw a straight line down, and I'll demonstrate, and here it goes. So it rotates inward, if that makes sense. And so you need to have some strength and mobility of that internal rotation. And some of the things you can do is, again, like I demonstrated, is just simply rotating your hip inward and just getting comfortable with this. And then you can go, what was the one I did? This, where you go and flip your hips. This is a great one. I can do it this way. And you're basically going to flip-flop them. It's a great exercise, and these are one of the things you can work on while you build the strength for the pistol squat. Okay, so this part is, I guess, third in the series, is about the actual hip strength component. And obviously, all of your weight is in the pistol squat is borne on one leg, and you need to strengthen the hip for that. And like I said, most people think it's a quad dominant exercise, and the quad is a huge part of it, and your glute coming off the ground, but your hip actually is the linchpin that holds it all together. And one of the things I would recommend to people is work on the eccentric lowering of the pistol squat. So that's what's coming back up, but just focusing on lowering yourself. And here I'm using a Bulgarian split squat stand, which I love for a multitude of reasons. It's adjustable, but it's high enough that's higher than a normal bench, and I'll show you why it's important. So you want to work on lowering and then also coming up, and concentrate on activating your hip, which is right here. Most people don't have very developed hip flexors, and this is a great way of learning safely how to activate that hip flexor. Okay, and so when you work on that higher height, eccentric, focused hip flexor exercise with like something tall, like a stand, you can work on something medium height, which is a typical weight bench would do, or a little bit more advanced is something even lower than your 90-degree flexed leg. And again, you want to focus on lowering yourself, not so much wanting to come back up, but just kind of lowering yourself and back down, and then come back up and lowering yourself down. And it's okay to have your butt plop down. The whole point of it is to get used to that deceleration, that lowering, that eccentric phase, because that's where a lot of your strength gains are actually going to come from. Because again, you have probably strong enough quads, but I can almost guarantee you your hip flexor is not strong at all. And again, the cue here is to put your hand on your hip and to feel that hip flexor. Any muscle that's contracting, it's just to get an idea, because quite honestly, most people don't have very developed hip flexors. And this is just a great cue for you to know what it feels like to activate your hip flexor. And this is a massively hip flexor dominant exercise, and you'll feel it. So the next part will be trying to put it all together. Okay, so something I kind of glossed over is 2 points, and just to stop the Karens from complaining. I believe you need to have your body mass index, before you even try to attempt the pistol squat, below the overweight category. You know, you can whatever criticize me about BMI, but without having that good weight, body weight to strength ratio, it almost knocks you out of the opportunity to even attempt the pistol squat. That said, the other thing is I kind of glossed over as I'm squatting here is the range of necessary range of motion to even begin the pistol squat. And one of the things I took a break and made lunch. And one of the things I take for granted is the ability to get off the ground without any means of support with your hands. And by that meaning going from just simple ankle dorsiflexed, knees to the ground, to your heels, and up off the ground, back, this. And then you can even go from like this, and is an advanced move. The reason why I mention that is that these ranges of motion allow you to do things like this. And so without these ranges of motion, you're not going to have the ability to, like I said, execute the pistol squat. And again, these ranges of motion really, really help you in just daily life. And one of the things I really love is a simple piece of pipe or broomstick or whatever to assist you in this. Gyms have these laying around. If you look around, generally they're a lot thinner than this, and people use them for shoulder mobility work and all kinds of stuff. But it's a great, basically, cane to help stand up, and you can use it like that or one-sided. And getting that range, using assistance, even banded assistance, is going to help you get into the pistol squat and get out of the pistol squat, more importantly. And then the next videos, I'll try to talk more about incorporating all of this. Okay, so this is incorporating everything that I talked about, and it helps using the pole. So pistol squat, again, focus on the eccentric, and if you have to, fall onto a stool or whatever, but work on coming down. Putting your butt to the ground is the toughest variation of this, and I shouldn't have done that. So I'm completely elevated on one leg, and I kind of use this as a cane to pull up. And you feel that drive in your hip, kind of like this. It's probably better if I put it on the side, and you're driving up. Lowering, driving up. That's probably one of the best ways of doing this. A band is good, but you're relying too much on the tension to pull you up, where this is when you get to a spot of trouble, you can really push down on it. This is very, very, very handy. So again, kind of lowering yourself down and then coming back up. And you don't have to go all the way to the ground, just a little bit at a time, and again, to strengthen that hip. Okay, using the pole, pipe, broomstick, or whatever you have handy, ideally, it's going to be longer than the height of your waist. What you want to do is work on lowering yourself and not having that safety net of a bench underneath you. Again, you could do this with that in case you're really worried. But what you want to start to do is, again, strengthen that hip. And not so much the eccentric now, but it's coming back up. And the pole really helps you with that. And the meat of it is when you get to 90 degrees and push yourself back up. A band can help with this, but I prefer the pole because the band, you have to wait for the tension to pull you up. Here, if you get into a spot of trouble or panic, you can really push yourself up. And so ideally you get down here and all the way up. So I hope this tip helps you. I love these poles, simple PVC pipe, because it allows you to get that range of motion and build that strength to the point where you can lay it down, go down, and all the way up. Thanks for watching.